Welcome to Death Talk Unscripted, where I speak the truths most people avoid, especially at the threshold. I'm Paula, your host, Death Walker, and founder of Destiny's Door. And today, we're going to be diving into a topic that's long overdue, the Hippocratic Oath. You know, that promise of do no harm. I've thought about this topic for, several months now, and I've debated going back and forth as to whether I should bring it up in an episode or should I let sleeping dogs lie, and well, you can figure out which one got the calling to be done, because hence here we are doing the episode. But this do no harm, it has shaped the medical ethics, do you know, for over 2,000 years? I mean, that's back when the Greeks were in charge. But when it comes to dying, especially when I talk about medical aid and dying with anybody, that oath, especially when I talk to doctors, medical field, hospice people, nurses, even a lot of the religious aspects of, the population, I find that the oath is often used not to protect, but to deny. And so I'm going to break it down. I'm going to name the harm. And we're going to go ahead and ask some questions that no one wants to ask, but I'll go ahead and ask them. And one of the questions that I think is it time to rewrite that oath? Is it time to bring it up to the 21st century? Is it time to understand that there's a new intentional vibration out there, a new death movement that's rising? And don't you think that we should be moving the medical industry, the religious industry, hell, even the political industry machines? I think that they should be drawn into this Hippocratic Oath of do no harm, because each and every one of them in their own way do harm. They are causing harm. And again, it's not in any way that I see as protection. I think it is a travesty. It's denying them. And the reason I think so is because the dying deserve more than sedation and silence. They deserve sovereignty. They deserve choice. They deserve to be heard. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just jump right into, the whole episode, and let's start talking about it. The Hippocratic Oath says, do no harm, like I mentioned earlier. But what happens when that very oath becomes the barrier to autonomy, dignity, and sacred choice at the end of life? I mean, that's the end of life. I don't know if people understand that, but that is the last legacy that you will use to release the energy, spiritual being that has inhabited that bioorganic human body. And to deny that, to not want to set it free, to have it be trapped and prolonged into that bioorganic human container that is going to decay and has an expiration date anyways. So in this episode, like I said, I'm going to just dive into the ethical contradictions of, what modern medicine does, especially when it comes to medical aid and dying. Why are people denied the right to choose? Think about that. Why are we denied that right? Why are caregivers and families left to suffer in silence while professionals fall back on the oath written 2,400 years ago? It's time to ask, I think, is the oath still healing or is it harming? And what would it look like to rewrite it for a world that honors sovereignty, spirit, and the sacred exit? I don't know. So, like I said, the Hippocratic Oath to me, it's ancient. And anybody who listens to me, I am about the ancient, the ceremonial, the ritual. But I believe that everything ancient has a base, has a foundation. But it's up to each generation, each and every generation to take that ancient wisdom, that ancient knowledge, and progressively move it forward to, in my case, the 21st century. I don't have to lose all the ritual, all the ancientism and the wisdom and the knowledge to progressively make it fit the current status of what our collective is. It's revered. Yes, it is. And it's recited by every medical student. And that is sometimes scary for me, but I do understand the concept of the reverence of it. And yet, I say all this and I'm contradicted because when it comes to death, especially MAID, it's often used as like this shield, this barrier that, institutions and the medical healthcare industry and the politics and the religions, they put up this big, huge shield. And it's like, bam, you just hit your head on the wall. And it's not to protect the dying. I really don't believe that anymore. I think it's to avoid the conversation altogether. It's uncomfortable when someone looks at a medical professional who has dedicated their lives to, healing and managing this bioorganic human body that we have. But they put so much emphasis on the body that they forget that there's an energy spiritual being that is the main attraction. It's the main entity. The bioorganic human body that we carry around is merely the vessel. It's merely the tent, if you will, that we use so that we can sustain living in this time and place. And I think, again, it goes back to we don't want to have that conversation. Nobody wants to be the person on the other end when someone says, I'm done. I don't want any more treatment. I don't want anything else. I want to pick my day. I want to pick my time. I want to drink the Kool-Aid. And I want to be on my merry way. And that contradicts with everything that our collective and that Hippocratic Oath has instilled for 2,400 years. And I think it's time that we analyze it and we ask these hard questions and we confront this conversation. And I want to be able to look at my doctor and openly say, tell me about medical aid in dying. And I want them to tell me about it. I don't want them to hide behind some facade of do no harm. It sounds noble. I'll give you that. But what happens when keeping someone alive becomes the harm? Especially when you're keeping them alive through hospice or Recited, and they just don't want it. It goes against everything that their energy, soul, vibration, being wants and desires. What happens when the sedation of being in hospice or the Recited program, what happens when that sedation replaces the sovereignty, that autonomy, that cosmic evolutionary right to turn around and say, enough. I've had a great ride. I've experienced everything there is to experience with being in this bioorganic human body. And I understand that it's on its way out. I understand that it has a expiration date. But that doesn't mean that I have to, as a soul energy being, I shouldn't have to stick around trapped in it until it decides to stop. That's just not something that I think I can absolutely say doesn't cause harm. When a dying person knows soul deep that it's time, but the system says, no, that's against my oath. When did their oath become more important than my soul deep energy being saying that it's time? I'm done. That's not healing, is it? Is it helping? Is it causing harm? I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's spiritual violence. And in the world we live today, I don't think that that's a really hard concept to swallow, is it? I mean, every single solitary system that we have has now turned into some sort of violence. The educational program, the political violence, we have, healthcare violence and everything. We have immigration, we have people being thrown across. We are in a violent world, so why would it be any different for me to consider that the do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath, is a form of spiritual violence? That's just my opinion and something to think about. And when I say spiritual violence, I would offer any religious person to come up and tell me how that doesn't fall into a category, because I'd be happy to explain to you how it does. I would like to have the medical community, the healthcare, the political arena, I would like them to acknowledge that we put so much emphasis on this bioorganic human body that we totally negate that soul essence, that vibration that doesn't need to hang around for that. There's no purpose in it. There's no finality in it at all. It's just it's a trap. It's almost a torture, if you will, to confine someone and say, sorry, no, you can't do that, because it goes against what I believe. When did your beliefs become more important than any of the people who are dying? Aren't they the most important? Aren't they the single most, well, let's put it this way. Aren't they the star of the show? The main headliner? It's not you, the doctors. It's not the Hippocratic Oath. It really is the dying soul. It's not even about the bioorganic human body. It's about the energy soul being that doesn't want to be trapped in the bioorganic human body until the switch clicks off. Who says that's the right way to go? Who says there's no harm in that? I'm going to touch on another subject here, and let's talk about how this do no harm can actually spill over into the families and caregivers. Caregivers, they don't get a whole lot of love in this country. The only people who give caregivers a lot of love are other caregivers, because we're a community, we're a tribe, and nobody can understand absolutely what a caregiver feels and experiences and goes through, and what that personality, the sacrifice, the toll that personality is so needed, and it is so required in this collective, in this place and time. But we slide it off as, hey, you need to step up, you need to do it. But caregivers are left holding a ton of grief. The rage, the helplessness, these we don't address beforehand. Yes, we give support groups when it's happened, but we don't think of solutions that maybe don't have to take the families and the caregivers into that bottomless pit of trauma and grief and rage. Maybe if we had a do no harm oath that said, look, we don't want to do any harm. We, instead of saying, oh, we're going to do harm, but then we're going to help you fix it. Why? Why not just rewrite the oath a little bit? Why not just tweak it? Why not think of viable, positive solutions to avoid the spiritual violence on everyone's part? That whole tribe, the whole circle. Families watch their loved ones suffer, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, existentially. And they're told, we can't help, it's against the oath. So there's a portion of the collective that is not comfortable with going through the hospice and being trapped in the bioorganic human body until it decides to shut off, and then somehow that concludes the I did no harm, and then magically, the spirit's supposed to, or the energy vibration that I speak of, it is to be released at that point. Why? Why should we have anyone sit there and wait until the very last moment when the body chooses to shut off, if that's not their desire, if that's not their written ending that they want? It's not that hard. It's in fact, the population percentage that I'm talking about is probably not anywhere near what the population of hospice, where people just line up in the lines and they, get in there and they do hospice and everything. But there is a significant part of the collective that not only the dying want to be heard, not only do the dying want a choice of medical aid in dying, they want the bioorganic body to finish quicker. They don't want to necessarily hold out for that. They would like to go and make the choice of being in not control, but to be and write their final ending. And what right does anyone say that is harmful to the dying person or is harmful to the families? The only harm that I see is it's going against the individuals and the institutions that don't want to have the conversation. Again, we go right back to that. It's easier to throw that shield up and say, oh, I'm going to fall back on that Hippocratic Oath, than to have the real conversations of the fact that you might have a dying patient sitting in front of you that wants medical aid in dying. They need the navigation. They need the help to get there, especially if they live in a state that doesn't even consider it. Imagine not having a single solitary doctor that's on your side. I don't think that follows under the heading of do no harm. Who decided that preserving the body was more important than honoring the soul? Again, I go back to that spiritual violence. Which is more important? The energy being, the soul vibration, or the bioorganic human body that was only given to each of us when we came into this world to experience the human experience? But somehow, when the soul was given priority, that energy essence was the main priority for this little essence of a bioorganic human being to come in. It was the most important thing, but somehow in the dying phase, it's the least important thing. I don't know. That to me is harmful. That's doing a lot of harm. That's causing a lot of trauma. That's bringing on a lot of that spiritual violence that I'm talking about. I talk a lot about medical aid in dying, and I think it's the sacred choice that's constantly silenced, that's constantly barricaded with that shield. I choose to do no harm. That's doing harm. Again, you're telling someone who is dying that their choice to leave on their own terms is wrong? Tell me again how you're doing no harm. Please tell me, because I'm not understanding. Medical aid in dying is legal in a lot of places. In the United States, it's all, we have 11 states, and I'm honored that we have 11 states. I'd like to see all of them. That's my goal. But 90% of the time, the conversation is shut down before it begins. I'm podcasting from Florida. Can you imagine the conversations that I try to have here in Florida with the politics and the religion and the medical industry and the complete disregard for life? And I don't mean life in itself. I mean the end of life, the dying phase. And we have the largest dying population. We sit in a state that has the largest dying population. But yet we'll fall back on that. Ooh, I'm going to do no harm. I'm going to do no harm by not even having the conversation with you. Really? You already harmed me. Not only did you harm the dying person, me, and I'll use that, but you also insulted them. You also gaslighted them. You told them that as a dying person, they don't deserve to be heard. They don't deserve to be respected. They don't deserve to have autonomy and freedom and the right to go out of this existence their way, not your way, not the system's way, their way. Doctors, their fallback is, it's against my oath. Institutions, hospices, living facilities, Alzheimer's homes, dementia communities, everything. Those types of institutions, even the hospitals will say, we don't allow it. And the dying are left, you know what they're left with? No map, no ritual, no choice. But most importantly, no voice. What kind of society does that? What kind of a collective energy, soul beings puts more emphasis on a bioorganic body than they do the essence of what magically brings to life that bioorganic body? It's that soul essence, it's that energy. And when you leave them with no map, no ritual, no choice, isn't that again that spiritual violence? Isn't that a direct violation of do no harm? Aren't you in fact doing harm? Are you healing or are you hiding? Look, I'm not asking that they abandon the ethics. I'm not. I'm not asking anyone to abandon your ethics. What I am asking is to evolve them. We are in the 21st century. We have the largest population we have ever had in the history of the United States of America, and they're dying. 55 million baby boomers are dying. And then you add in the Gen Z, the Gen X, and the Gen Z. They're starting their dying process earlier, in their 40s and even 50s. So now they're overlapping into the dying phases. And we still have chosen not to evolve? We still are running on a 2,400-year-old oath? Really? What if do no harm meant do not prolong suffering? What if it meant do not silence the soul? What if it meant do not deny autonomy? What if we had intentional communities like Destiny's Door, the nonprofit that I have founded? What if we had places where this is what do not harm meant, where medical aid conversations not only were talked about, but were celebrated, that were honored, that we took ancient, beautiful concepts of do no harm and we evolved them through this community. And we invited families and caregivers and the dying to come and to have their voices heard, to have autonomy, to have sovereignty. What if the oath included respect for end-of-life choice? What if we had support for MAID? It was a sacred medicine. The place that I dream of, that's what it is. It's sacred ritual medicine. That's what medical aid in dying is about. What if it is recognition that death is not a failure? We've got to get that concept out of our head. That concept cannot be directly related to do no harm anymore. It cannot be. It has to be what we call a transition. It's time to rewrite the oath. It's time to reflect the world that we live in, to honor the dying as sovereign beings, to walk with them, not against them. Because the true harm, my friends, is pretending we know better than the soul that's ready to go. Who are we? Who are you? The institutions, the hospitals, the medical community, the political community, the religious community. Who are you guys to know better than that soul being who is dying? Thank you for walking this truth with me today. If you're a caregiver, a clinician, a family member, or someone nearing the threshold yourself, I hope this episode cracked something open. I hope that if you are an institution, if you're a hospice nurse, if you are a facilitator for dementia or Alzheimer's or a hospital or any type of nursing home, I hope that it also cracks something open for you. I hope that you realize that the Hippocratic Oath was never meant to be a cage. And yet for too many, it has become exactly that. We're not here to abandon ethics. Like I said, that's not what I'm advocating. We're here to evolve them, to honor the soul's knowing, to restore autonomy at the end of life. MAID is not a threat to healing. They're dying. That's it. The best we can do is to let the soul being be released. It's a sacred choice. And it's time we stop pretending otherwise. Anyways, I'm about ready to wrap it up. So if this conversation stirred something in you, please share it, speak it. And if you're ready to walk deeper into this work, contact me. My links are everywhere. Just type in DeathWalker Paula in Google or any whatever form you do. And I promise you, if you're meant to find me, you'll find me. Until next time, folks, walk with reverence, speak with truth, And never forget, death is not the end. It's simply the return. So much love. Thanks, folks.